In the year our family was at its most destitute, I ended up finding an older sister, like an angel fallen from the sky, whom I discovered homeless and utterly alone, and I brought her back to our house. She was all intellect and no physical strength, but she possessed a true genius for making money. Just as I was preparing myself to happily ride on her coattails into a life of ease, a man appeared at our door, claiming he was her former husband. He insisted he was searching for his wife who had been lost, the wife of a great general. He wasn't the only one who seemed intent on taking my newfound sister away from me. But I told her not to worry. My name is Maya, and I have always been blessed with more muscle than brains. I was only 10 years old, out fetching water from the small river that ran just outside of Riverbend Village, when I first laid eyes on her. My sister, as I would come to know her, was frozen so profoundly that her skin had taken on a pale, almost bluish tint. She was lying there on the riverbank, perfectly still, so much so that it seemed she had stopped breathing altogether. A wave of fear washed over me, and I scrambled all the way home to fetch my parents. It wasn't until Mom and Dad were there with me that I finally dared to creep closer and get a proper look at the body. The fabric of her dress, a deep blue-green, was intricately embroidered with the most delicate patterns I had ever seen. Even though it was stained with mud and river silt, it was obvious that it was clothing of extremely high quality, nothing like the rough-spun clothes we wore. Dad gently pressed his fingers against her wrist, his face a mask of concentration. "She's still breathing," he announced, his voice low. After his words, Dad fell silent, and Mom did as well. Our family made its living from a few meager plots of land. We worked ourselves to the bone from sunup to sundown, but the harvest we brought in was barely enough to feed the four of us: Dad, Mom, me, and my younger brother, Daniel, who had just hit a major growth spurt and seemed to be eating more and more with each passing day. The thought of how we could possibly afford another mouth to feed hung heavy and unspoken in the air between my parents. "She's alive," Dad declared finally, his voice firm with resolve. "We have to save her." My father was known throughout the surrounding countryside for being a complete softy. Any lame puppy someone had tossed aside, or any half-dead kitten left to fend for itself, would inevitably end up with a name and a home inside our fenced yard. And the strangest thing was, Dad always seemed to possess a magic touch, managing to pull them back from the very brink of death. Mom would usually scold him for it, just a little, complaining about having too many mouths to feed. But those puppies and kittens always grew up to be fat and happy under our care. Now, with a half-dead person lying right in front of them, Mom just shot Dad a long, weary look before finally sighing and lending a hand. She remained unconscious as we carried her back to our small house. Her long, black hair was sopping wet, and her face was paler than the white ashes in our stove. Dad carefully laid her down on the only heated brick bed in our house, the one we all shared in the winter. Mom immediately went to work, wrapping her tightly in our thickest and oldest cotton quilt, leaving only her lifeless, beautiful face exposed to the air. The moment we saw her face clearly, even Daniel, who had been busy adding firewood to the stove, froze in his tracks. She looks like one of the goddesses in the paintings at the temple," he whispered in awe. The fire in the stove crackled and popped, and the room slowly began to warm up. The three of us gathered around the bed, whispering amongst ourselves in hushed tones. "There were those big floods upriver recently," I murmured. "I wonder where she could have washed down from." "Judging by her clothes," Mom added, "she's certainly no farm girl like us." "Once she's better, we should ask around," Dad concluded. "Maybe some rich family is missing their daughter." We had absolutely no money to spare for a doctor, so Dad had to start going up the mountain every single day to gather herbs known to fight off the cold and fever. Mom would then brew them into a bitter tea and painstakingly spoon-feed the dark medicine to the girl. The medicine seemed to be working, slowly but surely. She would drift between waking and sleeping, and when she was awake, she would just stare blankly up at the wooden beams of our ceiling, never saying a single word. Mom brought her a bowl of millet porridge, which she had cooked until it was a smooth, thick mush. The girl didn't even glance at it. Finally, gritting his teeth in a difficult decision, Dad went out and slaughtered our most productive egg-laying hen. The golden, fragrant chicken broth bubbled away in our cracked clay pot, and Daniel and I squatted beside it, swallowing our saliva as the delicious smell filled our small home. Mom carried a bowl of the greasy, rich soup to her bedside. "Miss, how about some soup? It's freshly made and it smells delicious." Her eyes flickered for a moment and her gaze fell on the steaming bowl. Daniel, who was still squatting below the edge of the bed, tugged on my sleeve. "Sis," he whispered, "is the angel lady mute?" That bowl of chicken soup eventually went cold, left completely untouched on the edge of the bed. That night, by the flickering light of a single candle, Mom and Dad made a decision. They sold our only piglet, a promising young sow, and used the money to bring a physician back from the nearby town. The doctor stroked his long white beard and examined her for a very long time before he finally declared that it was a sickness of the heart. He prescribed some medicine for her and then left. But her condition didn't improve in the slightest. If anything, she seemed to be getting worse. She wouldn't even take the new medicine anymore. There could be no other reason for it. She was determined to die. "What are we going to do if someone dies in our house?" Mom fretted, her voice laced with anxiety. The worry on Dad's face deepened into a permanent frown. The rice barrel was almost empty now, and the porridge we cooked for ourselves was so thin you could practically see your reflection in the watery broth. One afternoon, Mom held a bowl, using a small wooden spoon to scoop a tiny bit of the watery broth to the girl's lips. The girl kept her eyes closed, remaining completely unresponsive. In a sudden burst of frustration, Mom slammed the worn-out bowl down on the bedside table with a loud thump. Daniel and I, who were busy slurping our own thin porridge by the stove, jumped in fright. "Miss," Mom began, her voice firm and strong, "I'm a simple woman, and I don't know why you want to die. But as long as you're alive, you have a long road ahead of you. Whatever grudges you might be holding, whatever pain you're feeling, as long as you have a single breath left in your body, there's nothing you can't overcome. You're a beautiful girl with delicate skin. You must have been cherished and loved by someone. Even if you've fallen on hard times now, can you really bear to ignore the people who loved you?" After she had said her piece, Mom stood up. She scooped up the remaining water from the pot, which was practically clear, and drank it all down in a few quick gulps. The girl had opened her eyes at some point during Mom's speech, and she was staring intently at the cracked, empty bowl in Mom's hand. Tears began to stream silently down her face, fat, heavy drops rolling onto the pillow and soaking into the fabric. I peeked over at her, thinking that she was even beautiful when she cried. Mom used her calloused thumb to gently wipe away the endless flow of tears. "Maya," she said, turning to me, "there's a little hot water left in the pot. Add some cold to it, wash the lady's face, and let her get some sleep." After that day, she started eating the porridge. Dad began going to the mountains more often, trying to find anything edible or valuable, but the rice barrel in our kitchen remained pitifully empty. Every time Mom cooked, she would intentionally scoop the thickest part of the porridge for the girl. The three of us, Mom, Dad, and I, continued to drink the watery soup that was so thin you could see our reflections in it. As the days passed, her health steadily improved, though she still didn't talk much. Daniel still treasured his tattered old copy of a children's primer, a book Mom and Dad had traded half a basket of eggs to an old scholar in the next village to acquire. The corners were frayed and worn from constant use. Every day, without fail, he'd sit on the doorstep, mumbling the words under his breath. Sometimes he'd get stuck on a word he didn't know, like a fishbone caught in his throat, completely unable to get it out. He'd look up at me, his little face scrunched in frustration. "Sis!" he'd call, but calling me was useless. I didn't know the word either. Just then, a hoarse voice broke the silence in the room. "Bring it here." She had propped herself up with one hand on the bed, her eyes fixed on the tattered book in Daniel's hands. "The book," she said again, her voice a little stronger this time. Daniel carefully tiptoed to the bedside and handed her the book. "A fire poker," she said concisely. I immediately understood what she meant and handed her a long iron poker from the stove. She took it and began to write in the dirt floor next to the bed. "Graceful," she wrote, enunciating each syllable clearly. "Lady," she added, two more neat characters appearing in the dirt. "Graceful," she explained, her voice still flat, but no longer as cold and distant as before. "Means beautiful and serene." A lady is a virtuous and good woman. She paused, her gaze sweeping over my equally stunned face. You must study hard, and you must write your letters even better. From that day on, she stopped staring at the ceiling all day long. She began teaching Daniel his letters, starting from the simplest characters and moving to the more complex ones. Her voice, though still hoarse, was calm as she explained the meaning behind the square characters in the simplest terms for Daniel to understand. Maya, you listen too, she said one day, suddenly looking up at me as I squatted nearby, her gaze placid. It's better to know how to read than to be blind to the world. I blinked, then quickly scooted closer and nodded vigorously. From then on, our little homeschool had a new student. I became an auditor, listening in on every lesson. Mom and Dad were absolutely thrilled. They never imagined in their wildest dreams that they'd accidentally brought home a teacher. In those days, only girls from the wealthiest families ever learned how to read. Old Man Hemlock, the village tofu seller, was our best source of news as he traveled from village to village on his route. He knew whose son had just gotten married, which family's servant was beaten half to death for stealing, and all the other local gossip. He'd always lean against the big poplar tree at the village entrance, painting vivid pictures with his hands as he told his stories. Life in the countryside was dull, so Daniel and I would always squeeze into the crowd to listen. A while back, he announced one day, the wife of General Valerius from the capital passed away. The young general held a grand funeral, I heard. He even gave out money to the poor to accumulate good karma for her. I got a few pennies myself. Heavens above, what a tragedy, the aunties in the crowd chattered amongst themselves. The woman was already gone. What was the point of all that show? Daniel and I found the topic boring and soon walked away. Mom was still worried about the identity of the girl in our house. Do you remember where you came from? She asked her gently one day. I can ask that tofu seller to help you ask around. Your family must be worried sick about you. The girl stared blankly for a long time before she finally spoke. My name is Lena, she said softly. I have no family. No wonder she had wanted to die. Fine. If she had no one, then she had no one. Who gets through life without hitting a few bumps in the road? But in this world, how could a homeless orphan girl possibly survive on her own? In the end, Mom's soft heart won out. She let Lena stay, telling everyone in the village that she was the orphan daughter of a distant cousin who had fled a famine in her hometown. With an extra mouth to feed, we all had to work even harder. The harvest was bad that year, and our few plots of land wouldn't be enough to support the 5 of us. Mom and I spent a whole day hunched over on the ridges between fields, picking the biggest, freshest wild vegetables we could find until our large bamboo basket was overflowing. We also managed to borrow 2 measures of coarse flour from Mrs. Lee down the alley. Mrs. Lee was even feistier than Mom, and most people couldn't borrow a single thing from her. But last year, when her pig had a difficult birth, Mom had run out in the middle of a pouring rainstorm to help her, so she was willing to lend us the flour. Mom steamed several large baskets of coarse flour buns and took them, along with the cleaned vegetables, to sell at the market. But she only managed to make a few cents each day. Villagers loved to gossip, and it wasn't long before our neighbor, old Mrs. Yang, sidled up to Mom. If you ask me, she said conspiratorially, since she's an orphan, you should just find her a husband. My nephew on my mother's side. Before she could even finish her sentence, Mom grabbed a broom and threw it in her direction. Get lost, she yelled. My niece is a beauty. Your nephew is in his late 20s and can't even remember which plot of land is his own. How dare he even think about our girl? Our little yard was small, and every single word reached Lena's ears. Mom went to comfort her. Since you have no family, she said softly, if you don't mind, you can stay with us as long as you like. I know you're not an ordinary girl. Whether you stay or go is your decision to make. But country folk are hardworking. As long as you're here with us, you'll always have food to eat. Lena lowered her head. It looked like there were tears in her eyes, but they never fell. She started calling Mom Auntie, and a smile gradually returned to her face. She changed into Mom's plain cloth clothes, which somehow didn't hide her ethereal beauty at all. Mom held her at arm's length, looking her over with a proud smile. I bet even the prettiest socialite in the capital couldn't compare to our Lena. During the busy farming season, she came with us to the fields to help. But her body wasn't like ours, accustomed to hard labor. Within a few days, her delicate hands and feet were covered in painful blisters. The ones that had broken open were raw and bloody, a frightening sight to behold. I crushed some wild herbs I knew were good for wounds and carefully applied the paste to them. She winced in pain as I dabbed it on. I looked at her and couldn't help but say, "Sis, you're even pretty when you wince." She smiled, a real, genuine smile, and poked my head gently. "Maya will be pretty when she grows up too." Me? I'd be lucky to look like Mom, but unfortunately I took after Dad. Plus, I spent all my days running around with the other village girls, so my skin was tanned and dark. Mom couldn't bear to see Lena work in the fields anymore, so she had her stay home to prepare our meals and had Daniel bring them out to us in the fields. Lena held Mom's hand, her face full of guilt. "I'm already causing so much trouble by living here. How can I stay idle while all of you work so hard, Auntie? And now that Daniel knows a good number of characters, he really should be going to school. It looks like we need to find another way to make money." Mom and Dad were born poor farmers. What did they know about making money beyond working the land? They just tended their fields and hoped for enough rain and sun to have enough to eat. Lena decided to sell the beautiful blue-green dress she had been wearing when she arrived. The shopkeeper in town claimed it was damaged by the water and haggled the price way down. She only got 5 silver pieces for it. But for our family, that was a fortune. Mom's heart ached for her. Lena had no family, and that dress was probably the last thing she had from her old life. "That dress was special," Mom said, her voice full of regret. "You should have kept it as a memento. Life is hard, but as long as we all work together, we won't starve." Lena's eyes were bright and determined. "It's just a dress, a material thing. If selling it can help us out of this tight spot, then it has served its purpose." We wandered around the small town for a while, going in and out of several shops, before Lena finally decided what to buy. She bought fine sugar, white flour, and all sorts of other things that I had never even seen before. When we got back to our house, she had Dad build an earth oven in the yard, with a high dome on top and a place for firewood underneath. While Lena bustled around the new oven, Daniel and I were put in charge of feeding the fire, completely baffled by what she was planning. Our lame dog, River 1, and our dim-witted cat, River 2, squatted nearby, wagging their tails, equally confused. Her fingers moved with a lightning speed and precision I'd never witnessed, pinching and kneading the dough. In no time at all, a few lifelike rabbits were sitting on the board. And it wasn't just rabbits. She also made all kinds of exquisite flowers. Lena told me they were hibiscus and peonies. I'd never seen a real hibiscus or a peony in my life, so whatever Lena said, I believed. We worked all day and made a whole basket full of these beautiful pastries. Mom held one of the rabbit-shaped pastries in her hand, unable to bring herself to take a bite, praising Lena over and over again. Such skillful hands. Lena lowered her head, a sad smile on her face. "My grandmother used to love these, so I learned how to make them. I never thought this skill would come in handy like this." She then laid out her plan. "Maya and I have checked. There are only a few pastry shops in town. They have some variety, but their styles are nothing like the trendy ones they sell in the capital." So Lena and I started taking a basket to the market every day to sell our pastries, setting up a small stall. I was in charge of shouting and drawing a crowd with my loud voice, while Lena sat quietly to the side, her eyes as clear and calm as an autumn breeze. Just by sitting there, she attracted a lot of attention. Soon, a crowd gathered around our little stall. Lena had explained her strategy to me. There are already a few established pastry shops in town with loyal customers. Since we're new, we have to compete on price, but we can't make it too cheap, or people will think the quality is low. Our pastries were new and beautifully made, with a light, sweet flavor that wasn't cloying, yet they were priced the same as the plain-looking ones in the established shops. Lena even set aside 2 pieces to cut up into small samples for people to try. Everyone who tried them loved them, and we sold out our entire basket in no time at all. Thanks to their beautiful looks and fair price, our pastries quickly found a place at the market. Every time we went, people would be waiting for us. I noticed that quite a few of them were young men, who were probably there just to get a look at Lena. Word had already started to spread in town that there was an angel selling pastries on the east side of the street. Of course, Lena was beautiful, but I thought our pastries were pretty great too. One day, a wealthy looking lady, hearing the rumors, came by and scoffed when she saw Lena. Some angel, she sniffed. She's not all that. But Lena wasn't offended in the slightest. She even smiled and let the woman try a pastry for free. The woman, though her tongue was still sharp, ended up buying several portions. After that day, we saw her at our stall 8 times out of 10. A young scholar came by several times but never managed to buy any before we sold out, and he was always very disappointed. So we started saving a portion just for him. As we were packing up one day, Lena called out to him, "Sir." The moment he turned around, his ears turned bright red. Lena walked gracefully toward him, and the man froze completely, mesmerized. I secretly gave her a thumbs up from inside my sleeve. That's my sister, I thought with pride. At night, gathered around the candlelight, our whole family would hover over our growing money pouch, grinning from ear to ear. I never thought Maya would bring a lucky star home, Mom teased Lena one evening. Lena suddenly lowered her head and tears welled in her eyes. I leaned against her shoulder comfortingly. Things are getting better now, Lena. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Soon, Mom started helping with the pastries, and Dad continued to look after the fields. In his words, a farmer only feels secure when he's planting his own land. But sometimes we were just too busy to help him, so Lena spent a few cents to hire old Mr. Chian from the village to help Dad in the fields. Dad was so bothered by this that he paced the yard for half the night. When I got up to use the outhouse, he grabbed my arm. "Maya," he whispered, "this just feels wrong." Perhaps our business was doing a little too well because one day some men from the local restaurant came looking for us. This kind of thing happened a lot in the countryside. People get jealous of a successful business and come to make trouble. We were earning money with our own skills and hard work. Even if they took it to the magistrate, we were in the right. I stood in front of Lena like a mother hen ready to fight them off. But Lena seemed to have expected it. She smiled and slowly stood up. "Maya, this is Mr. Gareth, the manager of the Golden Carp Inn." I suddenly realized he looked familiar. I had seen him at the market. On the way to his inn, Lena was being very mysterious, which only made me more anxious. When we finally got home, she revealed the news in front of Mom and Dad. "The manager of the Golden Carp signed a contract with us," she announced calmly. "They'll order 50 portions of pastries every day at 40 cents per portion." 50 portions? 40 cents? That was over $30 a month. I was completely stunned. Dad, usually a man of few words, paced back and forth in the small room, his face beaming with happiness. But Mom was frowning. "Lena, dear, even if the three of us grew 8 hands each, we couldn't possibly make that many pastries. If we can't deliver, we'll have to pay a hefty penalty." Lena just smiled. "A few days ago, when we were too busy in the fields, didn't we hire someone to help?" Mom's eyes widened in understanding. "How can you just teach people a skill that makes money like that? I hear the master chefs in those big city restaurants don't even let others watch when they're making their signature dishes." But Lena explained her reasoning. "People get tired of even the most delicious pastries after a while. Even if we don't teach them, someone will figure out our recipes sooner or later. Besides," she added with a mysterious smile, "I know how to make more than just these 2 things. So, honey, our pastries were fairly priced, and we had already built up a base of regular customers at the market. Mr. Gareth didn't have to waste time and money trying to compete with us or replicate our success. He could just use our already established reputation." Lena also promised to introduce new and exciting pastry items every few months, which made it a very good deal for him. I finally understood. The valuable thing wasn't just the recipe for one type of pastry, it was Lena's vast knowledge. Mom was overjoyed. She walked with her head held high every day in the village. Even old Mrs. Jang, who used to gossip about us, changed her tune completely, fawning over Mom and saying how lucky she was to have such a beautiful and capable niece. Mom would just reply smugly, "Of course, our Lena is the best." Lena paid the village women who came to work for us 300 cents a month, which was as much as the men and their families earned doing hard, back-breaking labor. The women worked diligently and were grateful for the opportunity. Business at Mr. Gareth's restaurant boomed. In just a few months, the number of orders doubled, and soon several other shops and restaurants in the region wanted to sign contracts with us. Life was getting better and better. Lena also asked the scholar we sold pastries to, a young man named Elias, for favor, getting him to recommend Daniel to a private school in a nearby town. At first, Daniel was reluctant to go, wanting to stay home and help stoke the oven fires. But Lena gave him a stern lecture. Daniel, you can't see the best parts of this world from inside Riverbend Village. The world is unfair. It doesn't allow women like us to show our faces in public or achieve great things easily. But you're a man. You can still study. You still have a chance to see the world's hunger and its poverty, its immense beauty and its towering mountains. Daniel lowered his head without a word. I knew he had taken her words to heart. Lena wanted me to go to school for a few days too, but I refused. I, Maya, have always been more brawn than brains. The words just swam in front of my eyes and wouldn't go into my head. With Lena teaching me, I could read the accounts for our business and do the math, and for me, that was enough. Our family no longer had to worry about food. We even had extra money saved up. The deep wrinkles on Mom's face seemed to have faded. Dad didn't say anything, but he kept bringing home stray dogs. We were up to number 5 now, all named River. Mom stared at River 5 in Dad's arms, sighed deeply, and just walked away without a word. After the new year, I had shot up in height and was almost as tall as Lena. Now that Maya's not running around in the fields all day, she's gotten much fairer, Lena teased one day, leaning against Mom. She's a young lady now. I bet Auntie will be looking for a husband for you soon. Lena's face was free of worry now. The plain country clothes, when worn by her, only seemed to make her look more ethereal, like a fairy who had descended from the heavens. I often found myself just staring into her dark, bright eyes. If I were a man, I would marry Lena in a heartbeat and hide her away from myself. Mom laughed. Of course we'll have to find a husband for Maya, but what about you, Lena? I've noticed that scholar Elias has been coming over quite a few times, always using the excuse of tutoring Daniel. Lena quietly slipped away from the conversation. Auntie, what's so great about a husband? Money is much more lovable. Now we didn't just sell pastries. Lena had also created a novel soft cheese, a malt sugar mixed with bean flour, and all sorts of other delicious foods I'd never even seen or heard of before. I had never met such an amazing woman. She could read and write, make the most delicious desserts, and was a natural at accounting and business. This only made me even more curious about what Lena used to be before I found her. Was she the best chef in the capital? A wealthy shop owner? Or maybe a head maid in a large, noble household? I'd stick to her side and ask, but Lena would just smile without answering, her eyes filled with an endless, deep sorrow that I couldn't understand. The poplar tree at the village entrance turned green again and again, and Old Man Hemlock, the tofu seller, always brought good news with him. A new emperor had ascended the throne, taxes were being reduced, and a general amnesty was declared across the land. But even better news came to our doorstep. Daniel had passed the provincial exams and was now heading to the capital for the national ones. He had worked incredibly hard these past few years. The oil lamp in his small room often burned late into the night. Perhaps Lena's words all those years ago had taken deep root in his heart, and he'd been holding his breath and working towards this ever since. When the news arrived, our entire village buzzed with excitement. He was the only one in a 10-mile radius to become a provincial scholar. Everyone crowded outside our fence just to get a look at him. Some people even came to our door with money, saying they wanted to help fund Daniel's trip to the capital, but Lena politely sent them all away. Dad was so happy he started pacing the yard again, unable to stand still. A scholar in the family. Mom was in a frantic rush, wanting to go thank the gods and set off firecrackers to celebrate. Daniel quickly stopped her. Mom, why thank the gods? They didn't send me to school. Mom turned back, her face beaming. You're right. The one we should thank the most is your sister Lena. If it weren't for her, our whole family would probably still be stuck on those few acres of land, and you'd probably be a dirt kicker for the rest of your life, let alone talk about studying. As she spoke, she started to cry with joy. Lena helped Mom up. I'm your niece, Auntie. You all saved my life without a second thought. Of course, I should do my part for the family. Daniel is accomplished and we should celebrate. But our business has done well these past few years and some people are already jealous. Now that he's going to the capital for the exams, it's better to keep a low profile. Dad agreed. Lena's right. Daniel is accomplished. There will be plenty of time to celebrate later. So, Mom gave up the idea of a big celebration. Daniel stood there for a moment, then knelt on the ground and bowed 3 times. First, I thank my parents for giving me life. Second, I thank my sister Lena for her guidance. Third, I waited excitedly by his side. What's the third one? What are you thanking me for? Daniel never finished the sentence. I was so mad, I punched him on the arm and stormed off. I thank my sister Maya for not killing me, Daniel yelled after me. That just made me even madder, and I went back and punched him again. Mom started packing for Daniel's long journey, often pulling Lena and me aside, crying with worry. The capital is so far away. Daniel has never been away from me for so long. What if he runs into bandits on the road? At first, we tried to console her, saying that boys have to leave home eventually to make their way in the world. But after a few days of this, we couldn't take it anymore. Lena simply waved her hand decisively. What's so difficult about that? We'll all go to the capital together. Go together? Mom was stunned. Yes, Lena confirmed. What about the business here? I was stunned too. Sell it, Lena said simply. And River 1, River 2, River 3, all the way to River 7? Dad was also stunned. Bring them, Lena declared. So we took stock of our assets. We sold the pastry recipes to the aunties who had been working for us so they'd have a trade to support themselves, and we kept the house. Dad said we should keep it for sentimental reasons. On the day we left the village, all the aunties came to see us off. Thanks to Lena, Riverbend was no longer a poor village completely dependent on the weather for its survival. Everyone was very grateful and kept stuffing food and gifts onto our small donkey cart. And so, our strange group, 4 people, 5 dogs, and 2 cats, with our 1 donkey cart, set off on the long road to the capital. Along the way, Lena seemed very anxious at first, constantly looking over her shoulder, but as we got further from home, she gradually calmed down. After countless days and nights on the road, our group finally arrived at the capital. Mom and Dad stared up at the towering city gates, speechless for a long time. The prosperity and sheer size of the capital was beyond anything we could have ever imagined. We spent more than half of our life savings and could only afford 2 dilapidated rooms on the outskirts of the city. Mom clutched our bundle of money, her heart aching. The money we worked so hard to earn for years is gone in a flash here, she lamented. Lena was silent the whole time. In the evening, after settling Mom and Dad at an inn for the night, she took me out with her. I followed her, not knowing what was happening, but I kept quiet, trusting her completely. Lena led me out of the city gates, and we wound our way through quiet country lanes. In the last light of the setting sun, I looked up and surveyed our surroundings. It was a beautiful place, nestled by a mountain and a river, with vast, fertile fields stretching out before us. An old man was fetching water from a well at the village entrance. Lena led me straight toward him. When the old man saw Lena, he looked as if he'd seen a ghost and immediately started to run away. But Lena was quick and grabbed his arm. Mr. Silas, it's me. He finally calmed down, pulling Lena close to look her over from head to toe, and then he started to cry, great sobs shaking his old body. Miss, he wept, they all said you were dead. This old servant searched for you for months at the foot of Spirit Vulture Mountain, but there was no trace of you. Now that you're standing here, safe and sound, when I go to the next world, I'll finally have something good to report to the old mistress. Miss, I was shocked. No wonder Lena was so knowledgeable, so skilled, even able to help Daniel when he was stuck on his difficult essays. Lena was a young lady from a noble family in the capital. No wonder. Her extraordinary knowledge, her refined air. How could I have ever thought she was a simple cook or a maid? Mr. Silas led us into the village. All along the way, Lena's eyes were filled with tears, her face etched with a deep, profound sadness. I held her hand tightly and didn't ask any questions. Mr. Silas had me eat in the main hall while he and Lena talked privately in an inner room for a long time. When we left, Mr. Silas had already arranged a horse-drawn carriage for us. He walked us all the way to the edge of the village. Before we got into the carriage, he bowed deeply to me. "Thank you, Miss Maya." A man of his age giving me such a formal and respectful bow startled me so much that I quickly helped him up. I knew he was thanking me for saving Lena's life all those years ago. When I got into the carriage, I saw a large bundle sitting on the seat. Lena motioned for me to open it. I lifted a corner of the cloth and froze. Inside were several thick stacks of banknotes, along with some loose silver and a beautiful, intricately carved jade pendant. I, Maya, had never seen so much money in my entire life. I swallowed hard, unable to help myself. Seeing my dumbstruck expression, Lena pinched my cheek gently. "There are 3,000 silver pieces here," she said softly. "It's enough for our family to buy a bigger house. Daniel has to take his exams. And in this city where people look down on the poor, we can't appear too shabby and let others look down on him." I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. "Lena, if we take this much money, how can we ever pay it back? And that Mr. Silas." I couldn't finish my sentence. The mysteries surrounding Lena were as thick as the morning fog on the mountains back home, impossible to figure out. She seemed lost in thought for a moment before she continued, her voice soft and heavy with memory. "My mother passed away when I was very young. This estate was her dowry, and it was the last piece of property they didn't manage to take from me. My stepmother was cruel. She sold off or beat to death all the loyal servants who were around me. I couldn't bear it, so I secretly moved them here to this estate for safekeeping. Mr. Silas was one of them. When my father was away on business, she wouldn't give me any food. I got so hungry that I learned to stand on a stool and cook for myself. The more I cooked, the more dishes I learned. Later, my grandmother came to the capital from our ancestral home, and my life got a little better. Then my father died at his post, and my grandmother passed away from illness not long after. In this world, I had no family left." She spoke so calmly, but my heart ached listening to her story, and tears streamed down my face without my permission. No wonder Lena had wanted to die. That monstrous stepmother. How could she bear to bully someone as good and kind as Lena? I hugged her tightly. "Lena, you'll never have to live like that again. We're a family now, all of us together." Lena didn't hide anything from Mom and Dad. When Mom found out the truth, she cried and wiped her tears for an hour. Dad, usually so silent, his face darkened with anger. "I can't believe there are such black-hearted people living right under the Emperor's nose," he growled. But Lena just smiled. "Auntie, it's all in the past now. Now I have you and Uncle to love me, Maya to protect me, and Daniel is so driven. I'm just waiting to be the sister of the top scholar in the land." The family finally smiled through their tears. We bought a beautiful house with 2 courtyards. Lena and Mom picked it out together. Mom was so happy, she wandered through the new house over and over again, absolutely loving it. Dad was also very pleased with the new house because Lena had specially set aside a small courtyard just for him, to keep his rivers, all 7 of them. By the time we were fully moved in, it was already summer. That night, our family gathered to celebrate, and it was that night that Lena truly became my sister. She was no longer Mom's niece, but officially became Mom's adopted daughter. We started a business again. Lena said, "We can't just sit here and spend all our money until it's gone. No matter what, money is the most important thing for security." Mom and Dad nodded in deep agreement. By now, Lena was the most knowledgeable and respected person in our family. Mom wouldn't make any decisions, big or small, without asking for Lena's opinion first. Just when I thought we would go back to our old business of making pastries, Lena shook her head. "Our pastries made a name for themselves at the market in Riverbend, but here in the capital, there are countless shops with the most exquisite and unique desserts imaginable. We need to find a different path." While I was still racking my brain about what kind of business we could possibly start in this massive city, Lena had already made her move. Using the leftover money from the estate, she quickly bought the restaurant on Phoenix Avenue. At first, the manager was unwilling to sell. It was only when Lena offered him a 20% share of the restaurant's annual profits that he finally agreed. Later, Lena told me that the restaurant business in the capital was tough. A place called the Grand Welcome on Black Tortoise Avenue was dominating the scene, leaving very little business for anyone else. The manager's feigned reluctance to sell was just a tactic to try and drive the price down. I didn't understand. Then why give him 20% of the profits? I asked. Lena, nibbling on a pastry we'd bought from the Grand Welcome for research, said, "So that the manager will work for me with all his heart." I asked curiously, "Then why not just buy the Grand Welcome directly?" Lena laughed heartily. "Silly sister. We don't have nearly enough money for that." At first, I was a little worried. The restaurant was already doing poorly. Wouldn't Lena lose money by taking it over? But Lena wasn't concerned in the slightest. She quickly had the entire space remodeled, changed the sign, and renamed it the Four Seas Restaurant. I was secretly impressed. He's called the Grand Welcome, so we'll be the Four Seas. You welcome 10,000 guests, I'll embrace the Four Seas. We were already one-upping them with the name alone. Lena spent half a month locked away in the kitchen. When she finally emerged, it was time for the Four Seas to open for business. Lena didn't show her face. Instead, she had me hang the celebratory banners outside. She helped me with my hair and makeup. I looked at myself in the bronze mirror, amazed. The small, skinny village girl was gone. Lena carefully placed a beautiful hairpin in my hair and helped me change into a new, elegant dress. Maya, the new emperor, is open-minded. Women can run businesses now. Today, you'll go with Mom and Dad to hang the banners. It's time for you to get some experience leading from the front. I turned back to her. What about you, sis? She lowered her gaze, a shadow passing over her face. I have more important things to do. Only later did I understand why Lena had insisted on keeping the old manager, Mr. Finch. The waiters and cooks at the Four Seas were the same as before, and when it got busy, everyone worked together perfectly like a well-oiled machine. Mr. Finch was a master with the abacus. His account books were immaculate, and he was meticulous in his work. It turned out Lena valued Mr. Finch's management skills above all else. Lena developed incredible new dishes, and her brewed date wine was to die for. Not only that, she also put up a sign that read, "The Four Seas Restaurant has 103 dishes and wines, all made into lots. Any customer who spends over 2 silver pieces can draw 1 lot. If they draw a dish, they get it for free. If they draw the hidden dish, their entire meal is free." I muttered to myself, "Won't we lose money this way, sis?" Lena was unconcerned. "We lose a little here, gain a little there. We won't go bankrupt. Besides," she winked at me playfully, "it's not that easy to draw the hidden dish." The method worked like a charm. The young gentlemen and wealthy ladies of the capital flocked to our restaurant, eager to try their luck. Lena would hide in a private room upstairs, watching the packed hall below with great satisfaction. After that, every few months, the Four Seas would introduce a new game. Sometimes it was a poetry competition for a free meal. Other times it was solving riddles to win a bottle of wine. In short, the gimmicks never stopped. Of course, the menu was constantly being updated too, but that job was now handed over to the chefs, whom Lena had trained. Lena would recline on a couch in the upstairs private room, lifting a hand with the freshly painted nails. "Ugh, the color still isn't quite right," she'd sigh. I'd sidle up to her and say, "No nail polish is as beautiful as you are, sis." We would dissolve into laughter in the private room upstairs. Sometimes I'd think about how all the good things in our life now were because of Lena. On top of that, Lena always kept a close eye on the political situation in the capital. The new emperor promoted trade, and a large number of foreign merchants poured into the city. Lena seized the opportunity to add foreign dishes to the menu and even sent our chefs to different regions of the empire to learn local cuisines. For a time, the Four Seas was packed to the gills every single night, its fame eclipsing all others. Later, the Grand Welcome even started imitating our marketing gimmicks, but the speed of their imitation could never keep up with our constant updates, and they eventually gave up. During the spring civil service exams, our family went to see Daniel off. Mom held his hand, reminding him of this and that over and over again. You've always been diligent. Just do as I've taught you and you'll be fine, Lena said, patting Daniel on the shoulder. I couldn't help but add a few nagging reminders of my own. After Daniel entered the examination hall, we were about to head home. Just then, I heard a soft female voice behind me. That looks like Lady Aris, the daughter of the minister. Didn't she die? I don't usually eavesdrop, but the words Lady Aris were jarring. I turned to find the source of the voice. I saw a young lady in a moon-white dress whispering to the person next to her. Her skirt was covered in large, embroidered peonies, and her hair was so full of pearl-inlaid kingfisher feather hairpins, there was hardly any space left. I frowned and turned to ask Lena if this was one of her old friends from the capital, but Lena had already vanished in a flash. Mom and Dad were confused. I leaned in and whispered to Mom, Sis probably ran into someone she didn't want to see. Ever since that day, Lena had shut herself in her room, tinkering with cosmetics. The small courtyard was constantly filled with a fragrant, floral aroma. Mom whispered to me with a smile, Your sister's finally getting over her past. Look, she started caring about her appearance again. I didn't quite agree, but Lena always had her reasons for doing things. I was managing the 4Cs now, practically a mini manager myself. If Lena wanted to do something, she could go ahead. I had her back. The day Daniel came out of the examination hall, Mom, Dad, and I went to greet him. Lena stayed home to prepare a celebratory meal. Dad had a few cups of osmanthus wine and became very emotional. I never thought my family would be so fortunate, he said, his voice thick. This is all thanks to Lena. Lena quickly handed Dad a handkerchief. Father, it's because we are all good people that we have the life we do today. On the day the results were announced, Mom spent the entire morning burning incense and praying. Dad paced back and forth in the courtyard, followed by his 7 loyal rivers. Lena was much calmer. She had already sent a servant to check the public announcement board. Just as we were about to leave to check for ourselves, the servant came running back, his face beaming with joy. It had to be good news, and it was. Congratulations, Master and Madam. The young master has passed the national exams. Years later, I still remember that day so clearly. Our entire family cried tears of joy. From Riverbend Village to the capital, it had been such a long and arduous journey. Daniel's official appointment came a month later, a junior editor position at the prestigious Imperial Academy. Lena was ecstatic. She declared with a wave of her hand that the 4Cs would be free for all customers for 3 days. Even the usually stingy Mr. Finch agreed with a broad smile. Such happy news deserved a grand celebration. After we moved to the capital, Mom and Dad had effectively retired. Lena had even hired several servants and maids so they could enjoy their golden years in comfort. But they were used to a life of labor and couldn't just sit still. Dad actually cleared a patch of land in the backyard and started growing vegetables. Mom also had a hard time adjusting at first. It was only at Lena's insistence that she finally put down her work. Now she was even starting to look like a real lady of leisure. But Mom had been incredibly busy lately. Daniel had grown into a handsome young man, taking after her good looks. The wealthy merchants of the capital were flocking to our house, wanting to propose marriage for their daughters. Several of his new colleagues at the Imperial Academy also inquired if he was married. After visiting and discovering that the Liu family had 2 unmarried daughters, they started worrying about finding husbands for Lena and me too. Mom sent them away, wave after wave. Dad was busy returning all their expensive gifts, his vegetable patch completely neglected. Those people were full of empty compliments, even praising our lame dog River One as being majestic. Not a truthful word out of their mouths. Lena and I hid out at the restaurant, refusing to go home. After a while, they finally gave up. Before the reunion festival, a new cosmetics shop suddenly opened on Phoenix Avenue. It was immediately very popular. I followed the enchanting scent from the 4Cs to its door. As soon as I entered, the female manager came to greet me. When she saw my face clearly, she smiled and led me directly to the back room. And there was Lena, pretending to nap on a plush couch. Seeing me, she curved her lips into a triumphant smile. Maya, what do you think of my scented boudoir? I was shocked for a moment, then quickly recovered. I always knew you were destined for great things, sis. Are you planning to become the #1 female merchant in the capital? Lena laughed heartily. And why not? We collapsed in a fit of laughter, but I was also worried. Now that Daniel is an official, it might not be appropriate for us to be in business, I said. Lena propped her head on her hand and laughed at my concern. Have you forgotten, Maya? Although I'm a daughter of the Liu family now, on the official records back in Riverbend Village, I'm Mom's niece. Besides, we run an honest business and pay our taxes in full. Why would the government give us any trouble? Lena had thought of everything, so I put my worries aside. It was already August, and a spell of rain had cooled the weather. Lena, draped in a thin shawl, leaned against the window of the shop. She had the manager bring her a small, ornate box of scented powder. Here, take a look. I sniffed it. The fragrance was subtle but long-lasting, a beautiful mix of orchid and sandalwood. It was very unique. The day we sent Daniel to his exam, we were squeezed in a huge crowd of young ladies who were there to see off their brothers. The cloud of their cloying, heavy perfumes gave me a headache that Mom had to massage away later. Lena was so thoughtful. She must have gotten the idea for her own cosmetics that day. No wonder she'd been fiddling with powders and flowers ever since. This is Crimson Dew, she said with a smile. A scent I created when I was just a girl. I've added a few more spices to the original formula, and now the fragrance lasts even longer. The business model for the scented boudoir was different from the 4Cs. First, Lena let customers try it for free for a week. Once Crimson Dew became well known among the ladies of the capital, she suddenly ordered that only 30 units be sold each day. I looked at the mountain of Crimson Dew boxes piled up in the storeroom, wondering what kind of game she was playing this time. But within a few days, I understood completely. Before the doors even opened each day, the entrance to the scented boudoir was crowded with maids and servants sent to buy Crimson Dew for their mistresses. The young ladies who arrived later and couldn't get any would inevitably be persuaded by the silver-tongued manager Sue to buy a few other items instead. What a brilliant strategy. By now, the 4Cs was mostly managed by Mr. Finch, so I had more free time to wander around. The reunion festival was in 2 days, and I was playing chess with Lena in the back room of the perfume shop. My chess skills were no match for Lena's, so I had to resort to tugging on her sleeve and whining. Just then, a shrill, arrogant female voice came from the front of the shop. I've never not gotten something I wanted, you worthless servants. I peeked through the curtain at the front hall. Some of the nobles in this city were so unbearably arrogant. Lena frowned slightly, then picked up a chess piece. It's fine, Susie can handle it. The words were barely out of her mouth when manager Sue pushed through the curtain, looking very anxious. Mrs. Valerius is demanding Crimson Dew by name. If we don't give it to her, she's threatening to smash the shop. But today's quota is already sold out. If we give it to her, it'll break the store's rules. Who? Lena asked. Serafina, General Valerius's wife, manager Sue repeated. I saw Lena's eyes instantly turn as cold as ice. The fingertips holding the white chess piece went white from the pressure, and a palpable chill filled the air around her. I had never seen Lena like this before. It was frightening. My hand instinctively went to her shoulder. If she wants it, give it to her. It's fine, she said, her voice strained. She gradually returned to her usual self, but her eyes remained fixed on the front hall, as if she wanted to pierce through the thick curtain and flay that Mrs. Valerius alive. Who was this person? Since coming to the capital, Lena rarely went out, spending most of her time at the restaurant or the perfume shop. Could it be an old acquaintance? Lena didn't say, so we couldn't ask. But the name General Valerius sounded very familiar, though I couldn't quite place where I'd heard it before. On the night of the reunion festival, Mom prepared a huge feast at home. By the time Lena and I got back from the shop, it was almost dark. Just as we were about to enter the house, a man lunged out of the shadows and grabbed Lena's arm, nearly making her fall. I quickly steadied Lena, my anger flaring. I looked up and spat, Are you blind? Who do you think you're grabbing? The man looked up and I finally saw his face clearly. He had a chiseled jaw and a high-bridged nose. The red lanterns hanging above our gate cast a crimson glow on one side of his handsome face. His deep-set eyes were fixed intently on Lena. I had never seen such a handsome man in my life. I was momentarily stunned. Hearing my voice, our servants swarmed out of the house and surrounded the man. He ignored them completely, his eyes only for Lena. "Lena," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've finally found you. I never believed you were dead." Lena waved her hand, dismissing the servants. I stubbornly stayed by her side, refusing to leave, afraid he might do something rash. That day, Dinah said she saw you at the examination hall. I didn't believe it. Not until I smelled that perfume on Serafina. Only you know how to make that scent. Lena, come home with me. I swear I'll never listen to slander and fail you again. Serafina, General Valerius. He was General Valerius. Suddenly, it all came back to me in a rush. The year Lena first arrived, Old Man Hemlock, the tofu seller, had said that the wife of young General Valerius in the capital had died. He had held a grand funeral and even distributed money to the poor. If his wife was dead, then that Serafina must be his new wife. But why was he grabbing Lena and calling her by her name? I stared at Lena, then at the man. Wasn't Mrs. Valerius already dead? Dead. I remembered finding Lena by the river, her breath so faint she was almost gone. A chilling thought began to form in my mind. Could it be that Lena was once married, and that man standing before me was the General Valerius from the stories? The implication was terrifying. Combined with Lena's suicidal state back then, she had clearly been the victim of a terrible plot. I started to tremble all over. Lena raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. But he still didn't let go of her arm. River One had run out at some point and was barking furiously at him, alerting Mom, Dad, and Daniel inside. Our whole group came out and blocked the gateway. He glanced at Daniel, then back at Lena. "So it's you, Lord Lou." Daniel looked at the scene, confused, but having been an official for a while now, he reacted quickly. "General Valerius, to what do we owe the pleasure of your visit on the night of the reunion festival? And why are you holding my sister?" River One was still barking, and neighbors were starting to poke their heads out of their doors to see what all the commotion was about. He looked at us one last time, finally let go of Lena's arm, and left with a sharp flick of his sleeve. Lena's slap seemed to have taken all her strength. She collapsed against me. "If only I could kill him," she whispered, clenching her fists, a single tear rolling down her cheek. At last, the mystery surrounding her was unraveled. Lena was once the legitimate eldest daughter of Minister Aris of the capital's Ministry of Personnel, but her mother had died young. To care for his young daughter, Minister Aris married a woman from the Mung family, known for her virtue. At first, she was genuinely kind, but after having her own daughter, she developed two faces. Publicly, she was loving and concerned, but in private, she constantly tormented Lena, withholding food and giving her the worst, threadbare clothes. After Minister Aris died at his post, she dropped the pretense of kindness entirely. If Lena's grandmother hadn't rushed to the capital from their ancestral home in Jinling, Lena might not have survived to adulthood. The grandmother doted on her granddaughter, and only after seeing Lena safely married to her childhood sweetheart Valerius did she pass away peacefully. It seemed Lena had found a good man and would have support for the rest of her life. But less than a month after their wedding, Valerius went off to war. When he returned, he had a delicate, beautiful woman by his side. That beauty was Serafina. She was a master manipulator, convincing Valerius to make her his concubine. She played the victim day after day, getting Valerius to spend every night with her. She stooped even lower, framing Lena for causing her to have a miscarriage. Valerius didn't even listen to Lena's defense. Seeing that Lena had no father or brothers to back her up, he locked her in the ancestral hall. Lena cried until she had no tears left. The woman's greed was insatiable. She wanted to be the sole mistress of the general's mansion. So she feigned friendship, tricking Lena into going to Spirit Vulture Mountain to pray for a child. I knew that mountain. It was just outside the city, with pines so tall they seemed to touch the clouds, hence the name. A great waterfall cascaded from the top all the way to the bottom. Serafina staged a scene, claiming Lena was holding her hostage and trying to force her to leave the mansion. When Valerius arrived, she leapt towards the cliff edge. Lena stood by, too shocked to react. Valerius was a military man, swift and agile. He managed to catch his beloved concubine. But as he did, the woman took the opportunity to shove Lena off the cliff. Thanks to the powerful waterfall, Lena didn't fall to her death on the rocks below as they had intended. Instead, she was carried by the floodwaters downriver, all the way to the small river outside Riverbend Village. Finally, I understood everything. These people were all in it together. Lena, born a noble lady, was schemed against, left for dead, and driven to utter despair. They deserved to die. A grim silence filled our new home. Daniel spoke up first, his voice hard as steel. "Don't be afraid, sis. He will die." Lena quickly sat up. "Daniel, it wasn't easy for you to get where you are. You must not act rashly." Mom looked at Lena with so much heartache in her eyes and only calmed down after Daniel promised not to risk his own life for revenge. "This capital is crawling with vipers and rats," Dad said, his face dark with fury. "Father," Lena said, "they gave Lena Aris a grand funeral. Everyone in the capital knows she's dead. He can't do anything to us now." Was that really true? I felt a deep sense of unease. Sure enough, 3 days later, Valerius came to our door again. Lena wasn't home, and he ran into Mom. Mom immediately grabbed a broom and chased him out of our yard. "You vile creature! How dare you try to associate with my daughter? Get out!" He blocked the door, his voice cold and threatening. "Madam Lou, I advise you not to get involved with her. You don't want to jeopardize your son-in-law's career." I searched the yard for a suitable weapon but found none. I turned and opened the dog pens. River 1 led the charge, followed by a pack of 6 other rivers, all barking furiously at Valerius. River 7 even managed to bite the hem of his outer robe. He hastily let go of the doorframe and walked away, muttering something about us being barbaric and crude. Crude is right. All the grace and education in our family is concentrated in Lena. I was always puzzled. Valerius adored Serafina so much. Why was he now begging Lena to come back to him? A couple of days later, I understood everything. The scented boudoir was a place for women, and where there are women, there's no shortage of gossip. Valerius was trying to divorce his wife. It turned out Serafina was all delicate charm and had no idea how to manage a large household or its finances, which greatly annoyed her mother-in-law. She was also frail and couldn't seem to have children. All day long, she'd cry and throw tantrums, forbidding Valerius from seeing his other concubines. Valerius gradually grew tired of her constant drama and began to remember how good and capable Lena had been. Valerius had accidentally smelled a scent on a woman that reminded him of Lena's crimson dew. To please him, Serafina had tracked down the scented boudoir and bought some. That explained everything. I later regretted selling the crimson dew to Serafina that day, but Lena comforted me. To make a living in the imperial city, we were bound to run into them sooner or later. Now that Daniel has a stable official post, I can finally rest easy. It hit me then. Why Lena had been so anxious on the road to the capital, and why she had waited until Daniel's position was secure before opening the scented boudoir. If crimson dew had circulated in the capital earlier, Valerius would have found us, and Daniel probably wouldn't have even passed the metropolitan exams. After all, the Valerius family had deep roots in the capital and held real political power. Crushing a small, unknown family like ours would have been easy. Valerius started causing trouble for Daniel at court, trying to make us back down. At first, the emperor didn't pay much attention, but over time, he started to have his doubts and repeatedly reprimanded Daniel in public. A sense of dread filled our home. Valerius came to our house a few more times, always begging Lena to return, even offering to make her his co-equal wife if she came back. Mom was so angry she threw whatever she could get her hands on at him. After being driven away by my parents several times, he left with a final threat. But before he could make his next move, Valerius was dispatched to the southwest to fight a war against a rebellion. That gave us a bit of a breather. Lena took the opportunity to buy several more shops, and our business was booming. The war in the southwest dragged on for months. The imperial court suffered one defeat after another, and the emperor was reportedly sick with anger. A flood of refugees poured into the capital from the war-torn regions, and a sense of panic began to set in. Lena and I stood on the second floor of the scented boudoir, watching the chaos in the streets below. After a long silence, she sighed. A storm was brewing. The situation in the capital grew more unstable by the day. The rebel army was pushing north, and it looked like they were about to reach the imperial city itself. A gloomy cloud hung over that new year. Our business suffered, so Lena decided to close the shops early and let all the employees go home for the holiday. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Daniel was officially demoted. Mom was so anxious she couldn't stop crying. Lena calmed Mom down, told me to watch the house, and left with Daniel. They didn't return until late that night. I thought there might be a turn of events, but Lena just shook her head. He's been demoted to Nanhui. That place was even poorer than Riverbend Village, full of poisonous snakes and deadly miasma. Tears instantly welled up in my eyes. I had seen how hard that silly boy had worked all these years, never resting, through bitter cold and scorching heat. But Daniel was unfazed. "Sis," he told me, "I've seen the prosperity of the capital. It's time I saw the hunger and poverty of the people." I was struck by the realization that the little boy who used to trail behind me everywhere had truly grown up. He could now stand on his own 2 feet. Before Mom and I could even finish packing for his journey, the rebels attacked the capital. The streets were filled with people fleeing in all directions. Daniel gathered all our servants in one place and barred the main gates. He told Lena and me to look after our parents, then mounted his horse and rode off into the chaos. Mom grabbed his cloak in desperation. "The rebels are everywhere, son. Let's stay together as a family." Daniel's eyes were resolute. "Don't worry, Mom." Watching his retreating figure, my mind was in turmoil. Lena and I took our parents and all the servants to hide in the secret room in our house, a cellar which Lena had prepared when she saw the situation in the city deteriorating. The chaos outside lasted for 3 full days. We didn't dare make a move or a sound. On the fourth day, a general in full armor burst into our house. I was instantly on guard. Seeing him walk towards our hiding place, I pushed Lena and my parents inside and turned to face him alone. The most important thing now was to protect them. Sacrificing myself didn't matter. I stood facing him, my body trembling uncontrollably. His long spear seemed to be dripping with fresh blood. I forced myself to meet his eyes. He had a pair of handsome, almond-shaped eyes and sharp eyebrows. Even without moving, he radiated the grim aura of a seasoned warrior. He suddenly lowered his spear and smiled at me, looking seemingly embarrassed. "You must be Daniel's sister," he said. "Sorry, I didn't have time to change. I must have scared you. My name is Kai, a general of the elite cavalry. Daniel is tied up at the palace with urgent matters and asked me to come get you." "Everything is fine. We've won a great victory." "Everything is fine? A great victory?" I finally relaxed, my legs giving out from under me, and I collapsed onto the steps. I found out later that the Valerius family had become too powerful, and the emperor had long been wary of them. They had also been implicated in a massive military equipment corruption scandal, and the court could no longer tolerate it. When Valerius went south to suppress the rebels, he had secretly colluded with them, planning to sacrifice a city in exchange for staged military glory. But the rebels, greedy for more, double-crossed him and marched all the way to the capital. Daniel had been publicly reprimanded and demoted by the emperor, only to lower the Valerius family's guard. Secretly, he was investigating the corruption case. Working together with the emperor and General Kai, they finally brought the entire Valerius family to justice. This was all gossip I heard from customers at the shop. Lena listened to it all silently, her face unreadable. I didn't know if she felt vindicated or just tired. Life in the capital returned to normal. Our shops reopened. Lena had now expanded our business into the fabric and tea trade. She was now the incredibly wealthy proprietor Aris. Spring came. Daniel hosted a banquet at the Four Seas for his friends and colleagues. When one of them came to our table to pay his respects to Lena, I looked up. He looked very familiar. "This is an assistant minister from the Ministry of Revenue," Daniel said. "You've met him before, sis." Lena thought for a moment, then burst out laughing. "It's you! Elias!" So it was that scholar from all those years ago. He was the one who helped Daniel get into school back in our old town. "I was only transferred back to the capital before the new year," he said, smiling bashfully at Lena, his eyes as warm as a spring lake. "I should have visited sooner, but because of the Valerius family case, my brother Daniel and I had to avoid any suspicion." I glanced at Elias, then at Lena, and sighed. A grown sister can't be kept at home forever, I suppose. The war in the South had lasted for months, and it was the common people who suffered the most. The court called on merchants to donate generously to the disaster relief efforts in the Southwest. Lena thought for half a day, then, with a decisive wave of her hand, she donated 70% of our profits for the year, a full 200,000 silver dollars. $200,000! I clutched my chest in pain. As long as the Green Mountains are there, we won't have to worry about firewood, Lena said, patting my head. If the people are poor, what's the use of opening more shops if there are no customers to buy anything? I took a deep breath. Fine, fine. She was right, of course. Since the summers in the capital were just as hot as ever, I was lazing on the counter of the scented boudoir, playing with a small, decorative spear that General Kai had sent over as a gift, while Lena was doing some embroidery nearby. Suddenly, a man strode into my line of sight. His robes were embroidered with an exquisite four-clawed serpent, and he carried himself with an extraordinary, powerful air. I sized him up. "What can I get for you, sir?" He ignored me completely and spoke directly to Lena. "Lena, it's been a long time. I have missed you dearly. Would you care to visit the palace sometime?" I didn't understand what was happening, but the word palace echoed in my ears along with the image of that four-clawed serpent. A four-clawed serpent. A dragon. He was the emperor. Lena let out a soft laugh. "I filled your majesty's treasury. Aren't you going to reward me?" My mind went completely blank. I stood there, frozen, for a long time. After seeing the emperor off, my legs were still shaking. Lena was curled up in a ball on her couch, laughing at me. It turned out that before her wicked stepmother's downfall, Lena had served in the palace as a companion to the princess and had known the emperor since they were children. After her stepmother passed away and her life became unbearable, she never entered the palace again. The day Daniel was demoted, Lena had given him the jade pendant she had received from the imperial family in her youth, telling him to present it to the emperor, hoping he would show mercy on her brother. It was only then that the emperor learned that Lena Eris was still alive, and then so much had happened after that. For example, General Kai started showing up every 2 or 3 days to drink with Daniel. Elias also started dropping by every few days to discuss poetry with him. Suddenly, our brother Daniel became a very hot commodity in the city. After the new year, Daniel, at his wits' end from all the attention, requested an official post in the provincial region of Nanhui. The emperor initially refused, but then, for some reason, he agreed. Lena and I stayed in the capital to take care of our parents. And so, life went on. We had everything we could ever want, and everything was good. I lay in the attic of the Four Seas, nibbling on a new type of pastry the head chef had just invented. There was a noise at the door. I glanced over but saw no one. But I could see the bright red tassel of a spear fluttering in the wind just outside the doorway. Well, well. Looks like General Kai sent over another spear. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I, Maya, have always been more brawn than brains.